A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back to Video Games That Are Totally Awesome. For this instance, while I have talked a bit about games that revolved around PlayStation and Nintendo, for this instance, we'll probably just go on back to Sega. The Genesis lineage has had a lot of different games that I played over the years, and I could probably thank Sega for sending me a good copy of the Sega Genesis Classics collection for the PS4. Because after all, there's a good amount of titles that I could probably sit here talking about all day long. And in one particular instance, I might as well spend some time talking a bit about the Ooze, a 1995 release on the Genesis that basically happened around the same time that the Saturn was about to be released to the public. Yeah, basically speaking, summer of 1995 was basically the last chance for the Genesis to shine on, because after that point is when they basically would start to draw outwards and run out of steam. So how exactly does the Ooze hold up today? Well, the story at first gives us a unique cutscene. Well, not entirely a cutscene, but basically just a picture of a TV showcasing various photos. The photos in particular do correspond to the storyline that is being taught to us. We're basically shown some sort of factory, if you will. A factory in which that a doctor known as Daniel Kane is on the computer, and he apparently uncovers something known as Operation Omega. Some people barge into the room, supposedly that's his employer as well as his bodyguards. They restrain him, and his boss tends to inject something into his arm, causing him to liquefy. And then he gets forced into the toilet, basically being flushed away. Almost like the movie of the same name. Except this was a while before then. So basically speaking, Dr. Daniel Kane has uncovered some sort of secret plan, Operation Omega, and according to lore about the game, Operation Omega refers to some sort of disease that the corporation that he works for intends to release into the world. Some sort of global plague, if you will, a pandemic. But, yeah, this was 24 years before a real pandemic showed up and took the world by a bit of a chaotic storm. In any case, though, this corporation not only intended to unleash some sort of disease, they actually also planned on extorting local governments and various faculties for a large amount of money to supply a cure for that disease. They not only have knowledge of the disease, but they also know how to counteract it. So this is basically a global catastrophe that is being put together to some sort of simple exploitation plan. It sure is quite a way to begin the game here. You have Kane's boss threatening to annihilate the world's population with some sort of disease, and then try to steal millions, even billions of dollars from the world to crowdfund for some sort of cure? Wow. That's quite a way to go here. In any case, though, because Kane had known about this, one could probably have guessed he would have gone ahead and tried to spread news about this so that they'd be stopped. But the corporation thought of everything, and his own boss basically disposed of him in a pretty horrifying way. As the title screen for the Ooze gets put together along with that unique intro music, which of course was made possible thanks to a guy known as Howard Drace. He also made a lot of compositions for other games over the years, like Sonic & Knuckles, which came out the year before. But I'd say Howard, in this particular instance, he really knew how to make the game rather gritty and scary at the same time. And it sure was a sight to behold, because the Ooze is basically like the Blob, sort of, because he is in fact a liquefied body. Apparently Kane's skull had remained intact, but so did his fist, because the game at first gives us the location of the toxic dump. This supposedly is the starting point for Kane's journey to not only get back at the corporation for what happened in Operation Omega itself, but also because in order to regain his humanity, he needs to find a certain collectible, DNA helices that are scattered all over the wasteland. And unlike certain other games in which that these collectibles are optional, there are a good amount of other collectibles in this title that you can get as well, but the helices are the most important component. Collecting all of them means that you actually get the true ending here. Otherwise, it does tend to leave us with a rather tacky ending in any case. So, the helices are the most important piece here. Other than that, the gameplay focuses on a top-down perspective, or bird's eye view, if you will, of Cain basically wandering around the wasteland in his new ooze form. His skull is basically visible, and we also get the ability to punch with his intact fist. They're the only things in his entire body that have remained intact after that liquefaction process from that solution that he was injected with. Otherwise, there's a good amount of foot soldiers that the corporation has sent out to find his remains, in case he survived, that is. And Cain's ability to strike back really is quite a unique tale. One man versus an entire corporation. It's that unique tale that seems to carry on to this day, where a good amount of cases filed against larger companies tends to result in a supposed legal war. One man against possibly thousands, even millions of men, in an entirely different world. But you know what though? At first we are given a unique glimpse of what Cain's abilities are like. He can not only punch, but he also gets speed boosts from speed pickups, which turn his body yellow for some reason. And one unique thing that I might as well point about this game is that every time you get hit, the size of his body basically decreases. Small chunks of his ooze can basically be taken away, whether it be from simply touching an object, or getting in contact with the nearby wildlife, or from getting burned or whatnot. There's a good variety of different obstacles that you need to learn to overcome. And sometimes his body just gets so big that of course he's going to take a lot of hits. He's a bigger target, no doubt about it. There's also drainage pipes that you can enter in which that his entire body will shrink, and they'll basically transport you to a different side of the map. You don't exactly get a big map setting here, which at least does give you the ability to explore for a little bit and thankfully not get lost. But still, these levels tend to act like a freaking maze, and a lot of times it's hard to tell where you're supposed to go. They don't exactly give you much clear indication on where you're supposed to go here, and while the path itself doesn't exactly seem one-way or one-sided as it probably ought to be, the Ooze at least does give us the unique ability to explore around the levels a bit, find the DNA helices and other collectibles and whatnot, and thankfully be able to take out more bad guys. While we do get a variety of different attacks and a good variety of exploration, one of the biggest flaws about this game that I might as well point out is how difficult it gets. Yeah, the further into the game you go, beyond the toxic waste dump, beyond the many other levels that go from all directions, all the way to the point where Cain faces against his boss again. For the last time, thankfully. I myself hardly ever got through the third level. And man, the fact that I even got that far at all actually goes a little beyond some people. They might have basically been done with the game by the time they got through even level 1. Because each level does have multiple sections to it. You have the toxic waste dump, part 1, part 2, part 3, and most of the other levels tend to have this sort of repeating because there are multiple parts to them. It doesn't really feel necessary. Like, why can't they just go from the toxic waste dump to the next level, then the next level, and then the one after that, and then the final level pretty much? I guess it would have just made the game a little bit too short. But the gameplay overall, as it currently stands, seems to be at a minimal output of around 30 minutes, as most average gameplay tends to go. But that's mostly if you're hoping to get a hold of all of the DNA helices. And as I mentioned before, that's where you get the good ending. Because at first we are given a glimpse of Cain's body being suspended inside of a lava lamp held by his boss. And then we get to see Cain rise from his ooze form back into his human form. Depending on how many helices that you collected as they'll basically let you know how many of them that you collected between each level. There's basically up to 10 of them per level that you gotta pick up across all parts. Otherwise, all of Kane's body doesn't really come back. He rises up in 5 different segments, which basically reflect on the 5 levels that you completed, plus the main bonus levels that seem to take place, in which other helices and other items can be found just as well. Also, for his death, what do you think happens there, in addition to losing all of his lives? Well, it's the same thing. It's Kane's body being suspended in the boss's own lava lamp. The only difference is that with the boss having an evil grin on him. Otherwise, let's just say that the game, while it is rather difficult, it does have some nostalgic value to it. Like I said, the soundtrack is probably one of the few things that have remained in me for all this time. In fact, my own phone had the opening sequence as the ringtone, at least for a little while. But still, with something that memorable, of course you're going to have a good amount of nostalgia. And the value of this game still does carry over to the days of the internet. YouTube walkthroughs and whatnot do highlight a lot of people's frustrations with something like the Ooze, a character whom has gone through a lot of trying times, basically gets no mercy when trying to stop some evildoer's plans. And it's that same old cliche, after all, in which that a former business associate of some kingpin, if you will, does try to fight back after discovering the tragic, truth-telling fate of possibly the whole world and beyond. So I guess with all that in mind, for my overall scoring on the Ooze, we'll probably just go with maybe a medial 6.8 out of 10.1. Not really good for what it was, and being that it was a late entry in the Genesis's lifespan, it didn't really have to exist. But still, it gives us that unique, campy feeling with some eeriness, intimidation, and a lot of other prospects that still shine in the days of horror, suspense, and thriller. So I guess with that in mind, I'll probably come back with some more of this material later on, but until then, hopefully you guys get the gist by now. Like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more content.